Welcome to ICND1. My name is Jeremy Chara, and I'm going to be with you for the entire CCNA series, which is awesome because CCNA is awesome in itself. It's just such great technology, as well as one of the most valuable certifications that you can get. And actually, let me take that as a springboard to talk about what's in this nugget. Welcome to the intro. I want to go through a frequently asked questions like what's up with Cisco certification? Why do I want it? What is CCNA? Where does it fit? How long does it last? How hard is the exam? You know, all those kind of things. I want to just kind of put together a packed question and answer on Cisco certification. I want to look at CCNA 2013. This is the third time I've re-recorded CCNA since I've been with CBT Nuggets because Cisco's always adding more, changing it, updating the technology. So we'll look at what's new there. I want to talk about how we train at CBT Nuggets. You're probably like, dude, you've had too much coffee or something. Settle down. Actually, I haven't had any coffee this morning. It's all CCNA adrenaline, buddy. But CBT Nuggets just has a completely different way of training, which sometimes takes a little getting used to. Most of the time, people are just like, woohoo, enjoy the ride. And then finally, I want to talk about how you can get the most from this series, how you can take this, apply this straight to your job, straight to the certification, and walk away with the most you can possibly get from this series. So let's dive right into Cisco's certification in all its glory. First off, who is this company Cisco? Well, Cisco is the inventor of the router many moons ago, which sprungboard them into getting their network equipment into just about every internet service provider, every business, even a lot of homes all around the world have some form of Cisco technology. I mean, and their technology spans just product line after product line, voice over IP, security appliances, routers, switches. I mean, there's so much that they create that I can't even put it in a nutshell. There's just a lot. Think of them as like the Microsoft of networking technology. Now, Cisco certification is immensely valuable because not only are they the market leader, but everybody's following Cisco. I mean, Cisco's real claim to fame, if you really want to know the secret sauce of Cisco, it's all called iOS. Internetwork Operating System. It's their software that runs their products. It's not even the hardware, the boxes themselves. It's the software that runs it. It's kind of the de facto standard, and everybody kind of follows that. I mean, if you've ever seen, obviously you've seen Microsoft Windows. Well, if you look at the latest renditions of Linux, they're starting to gain a little traction because they've made themselves look enough like Windows that people are starting to accept them. And a lot of other network vendors out there are like, man, well, if we're going to play this game, we've got to make our operating system, our way of interfacing with our devices, enough like Cisco so somebody would be willing to take the jump and not have to relearn everything that they've already learned in Cisco. So knowing Cisco is just a huge benefit. Also, employers are looking for this because Cisco incentivizes them. Is that a word? I just made it up. They have incentive to hire you. Cisco says, you know what, if you hire certified people and certified people with depth to them, multiple certified people, we'll give you discounts on our Cisco equipment. You'll move up in your partner relationship and get X percentage points of discounts off on our equipment. So businesses, especially people that deal specifically in Cisco technologies, are very interested in people that are certified because it's an immediate return on investment, along with knowing that when people pass a Cisco certification exam, they know what they're doing. I mean, these certification exams are not just, oh, I read a book and now I can pass it. I mean, you really got to know your stuff to get into the Cisco world. Now, how do you get them? I've mentioned you pass the certification exam or more. I mean, for instance, to pass this, to get the CCENT certification, you pass the ICND1 exam, which is actually what this series lines up to. It's kind of the foundation of every Cisco certification out there. Yeah, it's important. Then as you move on, for instance, the CCNP currently has 3 exams. So you have to pass 3 individual exams, and now you're a Cisco certified network professional in routing and switching. And you can see all these different tracks that are there. So as you pass these exams, you gain certifications, and you can use their credentials, get their logos on your business cards and all that. These exams all last 3 years. Now, that might immediately raise some red flags for people going, what do you mean? I put all this time and money and effort into all this and it's going to expire after 3 years? Well, yes, but keep in mind, number one, that Cisco realizes technology is always changing. So if you don't keep your certifications current, technology 10 years ago isn't the same as it was today. And they don't want you to go out and say, oh, I'm a CCNP, I'm a CCIE, and give people the wrong impression that you are up and coming on the technology. Also, Cisco knows that if you leave the career, if you leave the industry for a long time, you're going to start losing some of those skills. So what they said is, okay, well, if let's say you get a CCENT, that now has a 3-year lifespan. Now, let's say that 2 years later, I would never think somebody would do this, but it can be done. 2 years later, you pass ICND2. ICND2. So ICND1 gives you the CCNT. ICND2 with ICND1 gives you a CCNA routing and switching. Well, what happens when you pass that exam is now you've got a CCENT that's renewed for 3 years. You have a CCNA that lasts for 3 years, and you're now, ready. I had my emphasis like there was some grand conclusion. Well, that was it. Now you've got a CCENT and a CCNA that both last for 3 years. Okay, so let's go further. Let's say 2 years later, just as an example, you take the first exam of the CCNP routing and switching. You take one exam here. Well, once you do that and you pass that exam, it automatically renews your CCNA routing and switching and your CCNT for 3 additional years. Now, it's not cumulative like if you had a year left, now it's 4 years. No, you just get a fresh 3 years on that. And as you pass the second exam, you get a fresh 3 years on the previous exam and the 2 exams. You see what I mean? So it's not hard. It's not one of those things where, man, let me just give you an example. I've been in Cisco long enough that I have all of these certifications. I've achieved them all, not these two. But if I had to keep every single one of them up to date, that's all I would do. That would be my career, is testing, because there's so many exams that I would have to take. Well, instead, what I do is every 2 years, the CCIE routing and switching was just a different animal altogether, lasts for 2 years. Every 2 years, I take the written renewal exam for that. As soon as I pass that, it not only renews my CCIE for 2 additional years, but all of the other certifications, essentially all the lower certifications that I have, get renewed for 2 years. Or, well, actually, these guys get renewed for 3 years as well. Right? So it's just one exam to rule them all at that point. It goes horizontal as well. Let's say you've got a CCNA routing and switching, and you say, oh man, I'm ready to get into voice. Well, you take and you pass this, you got a CCNA voice that lasts for 3 years. This gets renewed for 3 years. I feel like I'm trying to sell you something. And then buy now, and then you get, it's not that way. But the reason I bring that up is a lot of people are used to the college degree world, where it's like, okay, I got a college degree, now I'm set for life, right? I now have this certificate that does that. Well, certification and college degrees are very different. I actually created a micro nugget. So CBT Nuggets has micro nuggets that are free that you can check, where I discuss the difference between college degree and certification. Certifications are more dynamic. They take less time to achieve typically, but you have to keep them up. And depending on what industry you're in, certifications or college degree may be more respected than the other. But like I said, that's a whole nother topic. There's a micro nugget just on that. So next question. I said that there is 2 exams. ICND1 will get your CCENT. ICND2, when combined with ICND1, will get your CCNA. But there's additional one more. There's CCNA X, which is an all-in-one exam. The X stands for accelerated, to where you can get the CCNA certification with just one exam rather than taking the 2. So 2 questions on that. Some people say, number 1, well, do I get the CCENT as well if I pass that exam? No, you do not, but nobody cares. If you say you're a CCNA, nobody will ask you, oh, are you a CCENT too? That's just not a question that even comes up. Second thing is, well, is there a financial benefit to take CCNA X? Is it less expensive? Actually, matter of fact, I don't even think I've said yet there's fees. If you didn't know, these cost money. You can't just take these exams on a whim. I went to the View website, actually right over here, and checked the exams, and they are currently, these prices change, not often, but I laughed. I was like, today's price, like tomorrow, it's totally different. But these exams, they do change here and there. So for the individual exams, so ICND1 right there, ICND2 right there, they're $150 each. The all-in-one exam is $295. So is there a financial benefit? No. $5. Okay, so if you take that, why do they have the all-in-one exam? Well, it is designed for people that already have a CCNA, and it's going to expire. So they just want to get the CCNA exam. They don't want to move on. They don't want to have to study stuff that they don't know. They just want to take it again and get it. So Cisco, right on their website, say this is for people that already have experience. They already probably have a CCNA, and they just want to renew it. So is this more difficult? What's the story? I would say if you're taking a step into Cisco, I would always recommend going this route. Take the 2 exams. It's just, if you've ever missed an exam before, if you've taken these before and you miss it, it's just so like, especially when you're like, oh man, I just lost $300. I mean, that's painful, as well as knowing the fact that you didn't get it and you have to go back again to take it. So I always tell people, take the 2 exam route. Why? Time. It's the same question. CCNA-X is the same questions that you're going to get on ICND1 and ICND2. However, it's just I've taken all 3 of these, and it's just CCNA-X is more time constrained. Like you got to not only know your stuff, you got to be quick at doing it. So if you're going this route, I mean, you also get the feeling of like, yeah, I accomplished a milestone. Whereas CCNAX is like, man, it's like a sledgehammer. You either score big or it's like gambling, right? You either score big or you lose big. So can I retake these exams? Another question. If I fail it, can I retake it? Yes, you can. They will have a waiting period, it's like a couple weeks before you can schedule the exam again. But you can take them as much as you want. Obviously, at $150 or $300 a pop, you're not going to want to retake them that often. But you can take them again and again and again and again. Now, I know there may be more questions on certification, but I'm hoping to answer those as I go, and I also have made some more nuggets I'll tell you about at the end of the series to help in your certification prep. So, CCNA 2013, what is new? What has changed in this environment? Well, this has been the first major revision of CCNA since 2007. I looked back and I said, okay, what was new in 2007? 2007 was where they first split the CCNA into 2 separate exams, to where originally there was only one CCNA exam. Then they decided to say, okay, well, let's create the CCENT and CCNA. And so now we've got the 2 exams, so we have to say, well, what did they do beyond in the CCNA? So now in ICND1, they've just made it more complex. They've added more subnetting, introducing topics that were never there before, like variable length subnet masking. They've added more depth to the topic. For instance, they start getting into network address translation, access control lists, and VLANs, which those used to be all in the ICND2. Like they mentioned NAT previously in the previous version of ICND1, but they never really got into the deep configuration. Matter of fact, Cisco really expected you to know NAT configuration only by using the SDM, Security Device Manager. That is the graphic interface, the GUI that Cisco created to work with their devices. Now, you will find out quickly in the Cisco world, it is all command line based. Now, Cisco has started putting their toes in the water on creating graphic interfaces, but when it comes down to it, to really do troubleshooting, to really get nitty-gritty configuration, which is where Cisco specializes, you have to go beyond the GUI, which is why Cisco has gotten rid of all of that in the certification. They said, okay, we're not even going to teach you the GUI. If you want to go do a GUI, a graphic interface, you can learn that yourself. That's why it's a GUI. You can kind of go next, finish, and configure things. It's just kind of scary to do it that way, and I'll explain why as we get into this series itself. So now we're doing command line configuration of NAT, access control lists, and VLANs, which never even was able to get into the ICND1 before. More modern, as in the only routing protocol that you would learn in ICND1 previously was one called RIP. Rest in peace is what it now stands for. It's gone. And not gone from technology. It's still out there and will be for years and years to come. But nobody really, very, very few people really use RIP in a production network. And Cisco realized that and said, you know what? Why are we teaching people this legacy old protocol anyway? We're now going to teach OSPF, which is the most popular routing protocol in the world. Looking at the future, Cisco is saying, okay, we're also going to start moving IPv6, which is becoming more and more popular worldwide. The United States is a little slow to catch up to IPv6, but it's becoming more and more popular worldwide to address the IP address shortage and really open the door for innovation in the future. It's going to be creepy scary of how much stuff is going to be connected in the world as IP addresses no longer become an issue. So IPv6 is being added, and now Cisco, as you know, it's kind of like, well, they've added all this stuff. What have they taken out? Well, they got rid of a lot of taste testing technology. That's what I call it, where instead of in previous editions of ICND1, Cisco would say, well, we're going to test you on kind of the foundations of Wi-Fi, wireless network technology, because, Wi-Fi is a big topic and all that. So they put enough in there to where you kind of get your toes wet, but not really know much at all. So they started yanking stuff like that out. They're like, you know what? Now we've got a whole certification dedicated to wireless. If you want to know wireless, go take that certification. They got rid of serial connections to where ICND1 truly is kind of local LAN-based configuration. They don't get into point-to-point WAN links anyway, because that was kind of duplicated over here. here. You learn about it in ICND1 and then learn about it more in ICND2 and kind of repeat that information. So they said, let's move all of that over there. They also got rid of security. Now you're like, that's not good. Well, security is a huge topic. I mean, you saw in the certification, you had the CCNP security, CCNA security. It's a huge topic, and it really, you're going to learn, there is some security in here, but there's just a lot of fluff stuff on security is the best way I can say it. In ICND1 previously, that was kind of like, okay, that gives you a knowledge of security, but not really enough to do anything with it. So they said, let's get rid of all these testing topics to make room. Now, that being said, did they remove enough to justify all the stuff that they added? No, they did not. Cisco removed a massive amount of, or I should say, added a massive amount of stuff to ICND1. Honestly, as they released ICND1, the barrier to entry in this technology, I think, moved significantly higher. If you think about it, Cisco is now teaching their curriculum, their technology, even in high school classes, to where kids going into high school are able to learn Cisco technology. And Cisco's just saying, you know what? We're now expecting that people are going to have a fairly good technology feel because we live in a technology world. And couple that with Cisco did some studies and said, you know what? We're finding a lot of people getting their CCENT or their CCNA and stopping. Like they're not going any further. So they said previously, well, it gives them enough to be dangerous. They're kind of like, you know what? No more. If you want to claim to be a CCNA and stop there, you're going to know a whole lot of stuff. You're going to really have not just getting your feet wet, but a mastery of technology. So as you look at these two combined, ICND2 became a huge amount of troubleshooting. Now, you might say, why introduce a lot of troubleshooting? Troubleshooting shows a mastery of the topic. When you're thinking about levels of knowledge, you kind of start off, okay, I know nothing. Then maybe you start learning about something. You get to the point where you're like, okay, I can explain that, right? To where I know the concept, like I know what NAT is. I'm translating IP addresses and all that, so I can explain that to somebody. But to go beyond that, you say, okay, well now I can configure something. So if I have a clean router and it's no other configuration, I can configure network address translation, right? So that's kind of like a third level of knowledge. Then we come over here to the final level, which is troubleshooting. Troubleshooting not only means that you know how to do something in a clean environment, but also you can walk into an environment that's messy and you can start diagnosing things that are wrong. You can look and go, whoa. It seems like you're doing this based on these results I'm seeing. I know that something might not be configured correctly, and so you can go back and configure something correctly, even in very complex environments. So ICND2 really added a whole bunch of troubleshooting on all topics: switching, routing, access control list, network address translation. There's just this big picture mindset of how do I fix it if it's broken. They've added more switching topics, a lot more on spanning tree protocol, which is a loop prevention mechanism in networks, a lot more on ether channel, which never even made it into the CCNA before. I've actually seen a lot of topics that were previously CCNP level topics migrate their way down into the ICND2 now, or the CCNA certification, really right here. EIGRP in a lot more depth, because OSPF used to be only an ICND2 topic before. Now it's covered at its base level in ICND1, and now at ICND2 they're like, man, we're going all out. You're getting multi-area OSPF, previously only covered in the CCNP. You're getting OSPF version 3, which is OSPF for the IPv6 protocol, previously barely even covered in the CCNP because it was like, oh well, IPv6 is still a long way out. Not anymore. It's here. So more routing, more management. This was a topic that wasn't even in the CCNP before. To where now I need to know, how do I monitor my Cisco routers? That's SNMP. How do I make sure that they're up and running? How do I make sure that the bandwidth levels and processor usage and memories not being exhausted and all that? That's a huge amount of what is part of a day-to-day Cisco administrator's job. Never was even touched previously in the certification program. Syslog, sending messages to a server that notify you, send you a page to do whatever, notify you if something is going wrong, or provides an audit trail so that you can find out, well, who did that at 2 in the morning to take things out. NetFlow, allowing you to see, well, wait a sec, not only can I see that my internet bandwidth is used, but it's all because of that guy in the cubicle over there. What are you doing? Get off YouTube, whatever the case is. You are able to identify flows of traffic and classify. Again, all of this is like, I got to change pen colors for that. Look at that. And that wasn't even in the Cisco certification program anywhere before, and now it's starting to be introduced in ICND2. Last thing is, I said more scandal prevention, meaning iOS 15 is now the new standard version of iOS that everything's running on. Cisco introduced a massive new licensing model in iOS 15, and so they want you to know about it because that's a big part of what you do. So the last two things, and then we'll wrap up. How do we train at CBT Nuggets, and how do you get the most from this series? Well, how do we train? You've been experiencing it. A lot of whiteboard discussions. You'll see a lot of network diagrams. A lot of time they'll be pre-built. Sometimes I'll go, oh, okay, we got a router here connected to the internet, and it's protecting an internal email server from attacks from the outside. You got to block port 25, and lock that down. I mean, so we'll go through a lot of things like that on the fly. You'll see a lot of key facts presented, a lot of live demonstrations where we're doing the real configuration of Cisco devices right in front of you. And I will say, let me partner that with this down here. There's no script for this. You can tell I'm not reading anything. So a lot of times the demonstrations as I'm going through, we'll get to a point where like, well, didn't expect that to happen, which is great because we get to go through and troubleshoot it together, and you get to learn a lot from my own mistakes, and we figure out the solution together and go, oh, well, that's how it is. And I think that a lot of times it's even more valuable than just seeing a pristine configuration pasted in that works every single time for real world experience. The sessions themselves are real short and palatable, 15 to 30 minutes, sometimes a little more, but not much beyond that, to just keep you fresh and get a topic. And also down the road, when you're in a career in Cisco, you might go, oh, what was that access list configuration again? And you can come right back to it and go, oh, there it is. A little 15-minute explanation of access lists, and you're off and running. So my purpose, if I were to say my motivation, is two purposes. One is knowledge, and two is motivation. I'm convinced that people really do well at stuff that they enjoy. And they really enjoy stuff that they know. So it kind of partners together. The more that you know, the more you're like, wow, that's really cool. I mean, I can tell you, going through the certifications that I haven't been excited to get into some of them. I get in there and I'm like, oh, voice over IP. What's so exciting about making a phone ring? But before long, I'm starting to learn about the Nyquist theorem. And initially, I'm like, resistant. I don't need to know about that. And as I learn it, I'm like, wow, this is really cool. I want to explain this to somebody because it's really neat how you can take a phone call and turn it into bits and ones and zeros, and what's that whole process. So that's a lot of my goals, is of course to convey the knowledge, but also to show you just how neat this is to be able to set up and build a worldwide network. Okay, lastly, how do you get the most from this series? Number one, repeat. The beauty is you have it there. It's recorded. You can go through it many times. I mean, maybe the first time you just kick back and watch. Second time you start jotting down some questions and some thoughts, doing a little web research on it. Third time you start trying it on your own equipment. I mean, go through it as many times as you need to where you feel like you are getting a mastery of that topic. And as you're going through it, jot things down. I'm not talking, on an iPad or on a computer. I'm talking grab some real old school paper and a pen and write things down, because there's just something that engages when you start jotting things down. I mean, it doesn't even have to be sensical. I mean, maybe you've got your paper here and I'm talking about configuration and you're like, okay, he said enable mode. You just write down enable. Maybe you just crinkle it up and throw it away when you're all said and done. I'm not talking about just having notes for the future to study. I'm talking about engaging multiple senses, because your retention will go way up. I mean, just draw things as I'm talking and be like, okay, so he's got a router, kind of repeat what I'm drawing so that you can get in that mode of just engaging in what you're hearing. Thirdly, and I'm not going to spend too much time on these two topics, because if you look at the end of the series, I've actually created complete nuggets just on building a lab, like what to buy, how much it's going to cost, what to use to study and all that, and studying, study tactics, to where I say, well, here's the best way that you can study for these certification exams, but they are valid things. How to get the most is to build a lab, and I'm talking real equipment, not simulations or emulations. At this level, ICND1, I would really suggest having some real gear that you set up in your house, in your job, in your workplace, that you can work with and configure in a real environment. There's just something to having real equipment and non-simulation. And nowadays, equipment has come down hugely in price from when I first got into Cisco. So you can do it really on the cheap. Last two things go into what I was saying on the previous slide, kind of that knowledge and motivation. You will love what you know. So I always encourage you, dig deeper. I mean, if there's a topic that I get into and you're like, well, I wonder if, go there, go beyond, really get a mastery of it, because you start to get a love for it. I mean, think about anything that you know well, like if you know rock climbing or riding a bike or anything, that you know well. You're excited when somebody starts talking about it. Like when you meet somebody and they're like, "Yeah, I ride bikes for a hobby." You're like, "Really? Me too. Have you been on?" I mean, you just go off because you're excited about what you know and what you enjoy. So same thing here. As you know more about Cisco, you're going to develop a passion and a love for it that I'm telling you will skyrocket. It's almost like I want to build a flow chart to where it's like, okay, dig deeper, fall in love, land an amazing job. It just kind of goes hand in hand. The more that you enjoy, the better and better you'll do in your career because you're going to enjoy your career. Well, let me just wrap up by saying welcome to the world of Cisco. This technology is awesome. You're going to really enjoy this series, and I hope when you reach the end, you're going to be like, man, I can't wait for more and get into the ICND2, get your CCNA certification. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity in the future with this technology. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.